There are moments in life when a simple glance can unravel everything. For me, it all began one late afternoon, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the garden. I had just returned home from a long day at work, my mind preoccupied with the usual worries. As I stepped into the living room, I noticed him, Lucas, my daughter's husband, sitting by the window, a book in his hands, his brow furrowed in concentration. His presence was a quiet storm, as always, but today it hit differently. He wasn't just the man who'd married my only child, Sarah. He wasn't just my son-in-law. For a brief moment, I saw him as he truly was, a man with a life of his own, a body that seemed to speak of strength and secrets, and eyes that held a mystery I wasn't ready to confront. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Lucas and Sarah had been married for 5 years. They were perfect together, or so it seemed. They had built a life full of promise, laughter, and shared dreams. But the truth was, since Sarah had moved away for work and started a family, I had found myself in an endless sea of loneliness. My husband, James, had passed 2 years ago, leaving behind an emptiness I struggled to fill. And there he was, in the room, filling the space with his quiet intensity. The way he had leaned back in the chair, his arm resting on the backrest, made me forget to breathe. I didn't want to look, didn't want to feel what was creeping inside me. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. I blinked, suddenly aware of how long I had been standing there, staring at him. "Hey, Lucas," I replied, forcing a smile, as if everything were perfectly normal. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of his gaze lingering on me. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I knew. He knew. And it terrified me. The next few days passed in a haze. I tried to avoid him, but every time I was near him, I felt something pull me in. His laugh was infectious, the way he moved with confidence yet grace, the way his eyes met mine in a way that made me question everything. Every touch, every word, felt like it was charged with an electricity I couldn't deny. It was in the little moments, the way he handed me a glass of water, the soft brush of his hand against mine as we both reached for the same plate at dinner, the laughter that seemed to resonate deep within my chest when he shared a funny story. I told myself it was just my imagination, a fleeting fancy, but the connection between us was undeniable. Then one evening, after a dinner with friends, Sarah went to bed early, leaving Lucas and me alone in the kitchen. I was cleaning up when he stepped behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body radiating against mine. My pulse quickened. "Need any help?" he asked, his voice soft, almost a whisper. I shook my head, trying to steady my breath. "No, I've got it." But he didn't move. Instead, he lingered, his presence so strong it felt like a weight pressing down on my shoulders. I couldn't ignore the tension anymore. I had to break the silence. "Lucas," I whispered, glancing up at him. "This isn't right." He didn't back away. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "Why not?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. "We're both adults, aren't we?" My heart raced. My mind screamed for me to step back, to end it before it could go any further. But all I could do was stand there, trapped by the heat of his proximity. Before I could respond, his lips were on mine, urgent and hungry. The kiss was nothing like I'd ever experienced, it was reckless, as if he had been holding back for years. For a moment, I pushed against him, but my body betrayed me. I kissed him back, deepening the connection, the passion, the hunger. But then, as quickly as it had begun, it ended. We pulled away, both gasping for breath, our bodies still humming with the electricity of what had just transpired. "This can't happen again," I whispered, my voice trembling with guilt. But in my heart, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, every interaction felt charged, like we were walking a fine line between right and wrong. I told myself I would stay away from him, but the pull was too strong. Every time I saw him, I felt like I was drowning in something I couldn't escape. I tried to focus on Sarah, on the little things that used to bring me comfort. I baked cookies like I used to when she was young, hoping it would fill the house with a sense of normalcy. But everything felt off. Even the familiar routine of my days now seemed to carry an undercurrent of something forbidden, a secret I couldn't shake. One evening, when Sarah was out of town visiting her friend, I found myself alone with Lucas again. The tension between us was palpable, a quiet storm just waiting to break. We were sitting in the living room, watching TV, when it happened. I couldn't remember exactly how it began. It was as if we had both been waiting for the right moment, but the air was thick with an electric charge that couldn't be ignored. Without warning, he turned toward me, his eyes intense and unwavering. There was something in his gaze that made me forget everything, my guilt, my fear, my love for Sarah. The world outside seemed to vanish. "I've been thinking about you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "About us." I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I couldn't look away either. "You can't," I whispered, shaking my head, even as my heart raced. "Why not?" he asked, stepping closer. His breath was warm against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. "We're both adults, aren't we?" I opened my mouth to protest, but the words stuck in my throat. The truth was, I didn't know anymore. My emotions were a whirlwind of guilt, desire, and confusion. Before I could make a decision, his lips found mine again, and this time, I didn't pull away. The kiss was more desperate than before, more urgent. I felt his hands on my waist, pulling me closer, and I let him. I let myself be swept up in the moment, in the rush of emotions that I couldn't control. We moved to the bedroom in a haze, our clothes discarded in a trail behind us. The evening air felt soft against my skin as the quiet of the room enveloped us. There was no need for words between us, only the gentle pull of gravity that brought us closer with each passing second. The subtle scent of him lingered in the air, a reminder of how close we had become in such a short time. He moved with a calm confidence, his presence steady, like the grounding force in the midst of a storm I didn't realize I'd been caught in. I could feel the air between us shift with each subtle movement, a language we shared without the need for anything more than touch. His hands found mine, and for a moment, we simply held on, as if the act itself was enough. It wasn't hurried or frantic, but gentle, as if we were exploring each other for the first time, even though it felt as though we had always known each other. The quiet of the room, the soft rustle of sheets beneath us, and the steady rhythm of our breath created a space that was entirely our own. I had never felt such a deep sense of being seen, of being understood, without a word spoken. When he kissed me, it was not with urgency, but with a slow, deliberate passion that unraveled something inside of me. His lips were warm and familiar, yet still full of promise, as though each kiss was a new beginning. The tenderness with which he explored the lines of my face, the curve of my neck, felt like an invitation to something deeper. There was no need for rush. We were learning each other's stories, unspoken but clear in the way our bodies moved in harmony, like two pieces of a puzzle fitting perfectly together. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated us in a quiet intimacy, highlighting the delicate vulnerability we shared in this moment. There was something about the stillness that made everything feel infinitely precious. We moved together, not as two separate beings but as one, understanding each other in a way that transcended the physical. I felt an unfamiliar but welcome sense of peace, a profound connection that stretched beyond the confines of time and place. And when our bodies finally came to rest, intertwined and content, it was with a quiet knowing that whatever we had just shared would linger in us both, like a melody whose notes had been perfectly played. And when it was over, when the room felt quiet again, I felt empty in a way I had never felt before. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I didn't regret it. It wasn't long before Sarah found out. She caught us together in a moment of weakness, our bodies entangled, too far gone to deny. Her face, pale with shock and pain, was burned into my memory. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "How could you betray me like this?" I didn't have the answers. I didn't know how to explain the feelings I had buried deep inside, the loneliness that had led me down this path. All I knew was that I had destroyed everything, my relationship with Sarah, my integrity, and my own sense of self. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. The house felt empty, and I was left with the consequences of my choices. The guilt weighed heavy on me, but it wasn't just the affair that haunted me. It was the realization that I had lost everything I had once held dear. Lucas left soon after, not because I asked him to, but because he knew that what we had done had changed everything. He left, and Sarah, too, distanced herself from me. She could hardly look at me, the betrayal too fresh, too raw. Our relationship was shattered beyond repair. I was alone again. My heart was broken, not just because of what I had done to Sarah, but because of the realization that I had lost something deeper, something more precious than I could ever replace. I sat in the quiet of the house, the echoes of the past haunting me. The silence was deafening. There was no way back from this, no way to undo the damage. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And so, I sat, staring at the quiet storm I had created, wondering if there would ever be a way to find peace in the aftermath of the destruction I had caused.